as we're visiting together today, what we really, really, really want for you is that you will find the freshness of that desire. The freshness of it. The feeling of the desire is a manifestation that, oh, of course, it will be shored up with more detail. It will be filled in with more tactile, delicious, physical stuff. But when you give birth to a desire, you have accomplished a creation. You have achieved a manifestation. And at first, it's an emotional manifestation. In other words, it felt good. But we want to remind you of something that you don't want us to remind you of. And that is everything that you want because you think you would feel better in the having of it. And haven't you noticed that when you first want something, you feel good in the having of the idea of it, in the having of the feeling of it. You only get squirrely when you can't make it come about immediately this red hot minute. Then it starts sort of going south, doesn't it? I want this thing that I cannot have. Or I want this thing that will not come easily to me. Or I want this thing that I don't know how or when or who, or I don't know how it's going to come about. And as you torture yourself with unnecessary specific details, instead of just reveling in the deliciousness of the desire that is born within you, then you forget who you are and why you came. You came to birth desires. And we want to say to you that in the birthing of the desire, you have birthed a manifestation. But again, you don't want to hear us say that, do you? You don't want to dream of the car, you want the car. You don't want to dream of more prosperous times, you want the money and you want it now. But if we can convince you that if you would just go with the feeling of it, if you would just stop taking score of what's filled in, it will fill in. But it's a tricky thing, because what we're saying to you is, want it for the thrill of wanting it. Want it for the joy, for the thrill of the freshness of the desire. And hold that place, and then it has to fill in. But then that's tricky, because now you're doing it for ulterior motives. Now you're not doing it for the joy. You're doing it because you want the details to fill in, and you want the car in the garage, or the lover in your bed, or the money in your bank. And so as long as you want it for those reasons, and those reasons aren't fulfilled, you're so bright, you're aware that those reasons aren't fulfilled. You know what your bank balance is, and it's unfortunate that you know that. Because if you didn't know that, you could dream a little longer. If you weren't taking score of what's manifested in the full-blown, detailed, spectacular physical version, and instead you would take score of what's manifested in the fact that this fresh new desire is within you and it feels good, then you'd have it, you see. That's what we desire for you, because we feel the freshness of your desire. We have the wonderful experience of getting to stand in your vortex where every new desire you hatch is. And as far as we are concerned, since we are vibrational beings, and your new desires are vibrational also, then we get to revel in the fullness of your vibrational creations. And if you would revel in the fullness of the vibrational creation, then the manifestation that you call real life would have to come to be. We know it must be so annoying for you to interface with someone like us who is so vibrationally focused that we think it is the main event. Because it is the main event. You are vibrational beings too, you just don't know it. You've become so adept at translating vibration into this real life stuff that you're hung up on the real life stuff. And we're not trying to detract you from the real life stuff. We're not trying to get you to not want the car or the tactile things or the lover or the touch. We're not wanting to take you away from that, because in fact, this is the leading edge of all of that manifestation. This wonderful life in which you live is the furthest reaching manifestation of that which we all are. You came as spiritual beings into a world that will show itself to you in the fullest of spiritual sense through the physical, tactile things that you find delicious around you. We're not trying to talk you out of it. We're just trying to show you how, if you could lighten up a little on the what isness in terms of the stuff, and focus more fully on the isness in terms of the way you feel, then the stuff would match the way you feel. Oh, it already does. The stuff already does match the way you feel. So the question is, do you feel discouraged that the stuff seems to be missing? Because if you do, it will remain missing. Because the manifestation of the stuff follows precisely the manifestation of the emotion. That's why we want so much for you to make the manifestation of the emotion not just your main event, the only event that you're focused upon. So we know it's annoying. Focused on the emotion and the rest will follow, but don't worry about what's following, because if you worry about what's following, then you mess up the emotion. So just focus upon the emotion and the rest will follow, but don't worry about what's following, because when you worry about what's following, then you mess up the emotion and it doesn't follow. So just focus on the emotion and the rest will follow, but don't worry about what's following, because if you focus on what's following, if you get this, you get this. So often, for years, we've said, as we begin here, are you enjoying the freshness of that new desire? Do you remember when your desires felt fresh? Do you remember that feeling of getting an idea and just the idea of it just made you feel good for a moment? Well, that's the feeling we want you to hold, because as you maintain that, then everything fills in around it. But when that feeling of freshness is muted by your logic, by your awareness, by your comparison, by your taking score, by your measuring yourself with everybody else, by your measuring yourself with your own past experience, when you're measuring the filling in part, we really jumped right into this, didn't we? We've got you right out here on the leading edge. In other words, we are right out on the leading edge of creation with you, and here you are right here with us. Nice to meet you here. Do you believe that the emotion that you feel, that the emotion is more general or more specific than the filled in version? In other words, do you believe that the emotion that you feel when you think about the security of a new car or the fun of a new car, do you think that that emotion is more general or more specific than the leather seats, the torque of the engine, the fact that you no longer need a key, the incredible color that has been created that almost defies anybody's ability to translate color in cars? Have you seen the color of that car? Do you think that the emotion is more general or more specific? It is. It's general. And do you think that it's possible for you to find a general feeling? Do you think it's possible for you to find a general feeling of something without the specifics? This is the key. This is the missing piece that you've been looking for. Because if you can figure out how to induce within yourself, by the sheer focus of your mind upon the emotional properties of these things that you want, of these relationships that you want, of these recoveries that you want, of anything that you want, if you can isolate within yourself the emotional simplicity, then you will manage to put yourself in vibrational sync with your desire. And when you put yourself in vibrational alignment with your desire, the rest of it just follows. It's law. Whether you know it or not, or whether you even want to know it or not, you're vibrational beings. And you are, in this physical format, extensions of an eternal consciousness, a source energy point of view that has expressly presented itself here into this physical experience. So you began as source energy, but you remain as source energy even though you are here focused in this physical body. Most people, you're a little different than most people, don't get that. Most people don't get that. Most people think that they were non-physical. They call it soul or angel, or I came from heaven and here I am, but I'm here now, not there. And that's not true. You are source energy always. And that source energy is focused here in this physical body. And we want you to know that in you coming into this body, you didn't come without the larger part of you. The larger part of you came too. The larger part of you is present here in this time-space reality. The larger part of you is here now. And to the degree that you are in sync vibrationally, then you get the full representation of who you are. So how do you feel in a moment when the fullness of who you are is being allowed by you, when you realize that you are source energy in these physical bodies, and that the source energy part of you is always here with you, to the degree that you allow it through the syncing of the vibration, you have a fuller experience. In other words, how would you know when you're allowing the fullness of who you are to flow? You feel really good. You feel frisky. You feel clear-minded. You feel flexible. You feel intelligence. You feel all-knowingness. You feel intuitiveness. You feel harmony. You feel love. You feel appreciation. You feel tuned in, tapped in, turned on. You feel the fullness of who you are. And when you pinch it off, and it's easy to do because it's easy to get out of sync with source. All you have to do is get mad at somebody. You're out of sync with source. All you have to do is not like yourself a little. You're out of sync with source. All you have to do is nitpick over some unimportant thing and make something that isn't important important. In other words, as you focus lackfully, you're always out of sync with source. As you focus critically, you're always out of sync with source. So what's up with source? Does source have no discerning ability? Is source just blinded by love? Pretty much. Does source always need to find the positive aspects? Can source not be objective enough to see that something is screwy with that? Well, it isn't that source doesn't see the screwiness. It's just that source accepts the screwiness as not wrong, as not threatening. Source sees the variety in contrast. Source just, and you may want to write this down because it is profound beyond profound. Source just doesn't freak out. Source doesn't find unimportant things and use it as the excuse to pinch itself off from the source of source. And when you reach that place where you really get it, that everything is all right, and that every contrasting experience is just right in its providing desire. Do you accept that you are eternal beings? Oh yeah, blah, 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 Abraham. Yeah, we're eternal. Eternal, eternal, eternal. We're eternal. We get it. We're eternal. Eternal, 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 eternal. But do you get it that you are eternal beings? Oh yeah, we get it, Abraham. We're eternal. We're eternal, eternal, eternal. I want to talk about my car, please. Those people at work are really getting to me, Abraham. Can we talk about that? Something a little less eternal. But the reason that we want you to know that you are eternal is because you, in your eternalness, are so at one with this variety in which you are focused, because you know that the variety in which you are focused is giving birth to new preferences, and that's a big deal to an eternal being. Because if you're eternal, you need new ideas. If you're eternal, there must be something new to call you forward. And if there's not something new to call you forward, then you can't be eternal, and you can't have it both ways. You can't be eternal and not be eternal. You're eternal. We're just trying to make you accept the fact that there will always be variety that will always cause you to ask for something more. So when you make peace with the variety that is causing your expansion, as the source within you has made peace with the variety that is causing your expansion, then you'll be like source, and you won't freak out either in the contrast. Instead, you will accept the contrast as a wonderful, life-giving, life-promoting, eternally promoting thing.